Welcome to another Prophetic Perspective. This is Anthony here for the Revelation Bros. Today we're going to be talking about the news articles that came out up through 6/9, which was yesterday, that's Sunday. There are 26 articles that I seen, and for the sake of time, we're not going to go into many of these, but I want to just read you the headlines. And then we will discuss what the biblical worldview would say looking at this. So, very first one, and you're going to hear a lot of these echo the same, is first one: Israel and Hezbollah move closer to full-scale war. Another one: Netanyahu vows strong action against Hezbollah. Third article: Iran warns Israel will face formidable defeat against Hezbollah. Another one: Netanyahu says Israel prepared for very intense operation near Lebanon. Number 5, Carmel Arbit on Netanyahu, Israel, and a ceasefire deal. So as you see there, a lot of Israel. And if you understand the prophetic landscape, Israel is the watch on the wrist of God. What happens in Israel impacts the world. So when we look and we see these articles that are dealing with Israel, that's why you see this is so Israeli focused. This is not me just pulling stuff out of the Middle East. This is literally looking at articles that are popping up and seeing the same consistent theme time and again. So let's continue here, and then we'll kind of talk about a couple of these. Another one: Hezbollah ready to fight Israel in Lebanon amid new war threats. And to look at what's going on in Lebanon here, which is on the northern border of Israel, Israel is finishing up its war in Gaza, and they are in Rafah against the will of the United States, but thankfully they had the courage to go in and do what needs done. Just this Saturday, they had heroically rescued 4 hostages alive that had been placed in a 30,000 person civilian area with Hamas operatives, armed Hamas operatives, and civilians had held the hostages at gunpoint. And Israel did a brave and daring operation to rescue these. But in the midst of all this, Hamas is not the only enemy of Israel. You have had Hezbollah in the north that has continued to take pot shots at Israel from the north, sending drones and missiles. Just this week had set fires in the north of Israel through these newer bombs that they had begun firing at Israel. And it's important to watch this because the war between Israel and Hezbollah will be one that will be much different than the war between Hamas and Israel, due to the fact that Hezbollah is much bigger and much stronger than Hamas is. Not that Israel cannot handle them, but this will cost Israel more, unfortunately, to deal with Hezbollah. Hezbollah is said to have 150,000 rockets and missiles that they can begin to fire in from the north of Israel. Now, if you know the landscape of Israel, on the northwest coast of Israel, you have some major cities, one of which is Tel Aviv, and the other one, I believe, is Haifa. Both of those would be targets for Hezbollah, which, that in itself becomes very problematic. Now, you do have the Iron Dome there, but you have to guess at how much the Iron Dome would be able to shoot down if Hezbollah began to let loose, thousands of rockets per day. It's not cheap to use the Iron Dome, even though Israel does have other weapons that we've seen when Iran attacked them in April. However, it is important to note that this northern battlefield, as the war in Gaza is coming to a close quickly here as Israel is about to stomp out the last of Hamas. It seems right now Hezbollah knows that they're next, and I had just seen from a um, news source in Israel. His name is Amir Sarfati. I encourage anybody to go look him up. He's very informative. He lives in Israel. I'm trying to think. I think he lives in the Jezreel Valley. Um, but he has a ministry called Behold Israel, and he reports on what's going on daily. Very accurate. He provides videos, audio, news articles, you name it, and just tries to give a biblical perspective. And he had even said that basically that reports are coming out that Israel is anticipating a surprise attack from Hezbollah. See, Hezbollah knows the writing's on the wall. Israel evacuated the north of their country right before they went into Gaza after October 7th. And these people, and it's over 100,000, I believe, have not went back to their homes since. And this was in October 7th of 2023. So you look at this, that is upwards of 7 going on 8 months now. These people haven't been able to return to their homes. And until Hezbollah is dealt with, they can't. And so Israel doesn't have a choice but to eventually turn their eye to the north and to go after Hezbollah and deal with them. And so what these news articles are all showing, and what I'm trying to show you prophetically here, is that the next front for Israel is going to be Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now, there are some things that have transpired even today, being Monday the 10th, where the U.S. just got the Security Council to pass by a 14 yes vote and a 1 abstention by Russia, a ceasefire in Gaza. So it yet remains to be seen what's going to happen there. Is the United States going to force Israel to settle with Hamas and leave them in power in Gaza? Is there going to be a fight there? What's going to happen? Because it is in the Biden administration's best interest to force a ceasefire and to try to force a two-state solution, as we've talked about, for an election purpose, to have a foreign policy win, if you will. It's not in Israel's best interest for that to happen. They need to destroy Hamas completely, and then they need to go take care of Hezbollah, because right now they are surrounded by enemies. You have the Houthis in the south in Yemen firing at them. You have Hamas in the if you want to call it the eastern side of Israel, or no, it'd be the western side of Israel in Gaza there. You have in the north Hezbollah. You also have forces in Syria and Iraq. You have Iran, who you can't really trust. Israel's surrounded by enemies. And see, this brings up a prophetic book of the Bible called Psalm 83. This is a little bit controversial. There are some Bible teachers that teach Psalm 83 was fulfilled in the War of Independence in 1948. However, there is a Bible teacher by the name of Bill Solis who provides compelling evidence that that is not the case, and that when you read this psalm, it shows that these inner ring of enemies that Israel is currently beginning to fight is going to turn into an all-out war where Israel is going to have to deal with them. But this is a precursor to the war everybody's talking about, which is Ezekiel 38 and 39, the war of Gog of Magog, where it's the Russia, Turkey, Iran confederacy. But before that can happen, this Psalm 83 has to take place. And so what you're seeing with all this news coming up about Hezbollah, Lebanon, and Israel, this is something to pay attention to, because I believe prophetically on the calendar, this is the next thing to take place, is that Israel will end up in a conflict with Hezbollah, and it'll be for keeps, because Israel has to deal with the threat on their northern border. They cannot allow it to go back to a status quo. I had seen that Hezbollah, since October 7th, has fired hundreds and hundreds of rockets at Israel. It has been by no means a peaceful coexistence since October 7th. The only difference is Hezbollah hasn't opened up and given the full arsenal of what they have, and Israel has only retaliated for the shots that it's taken. It hasn't opened up a new front in the war, but that seems to be changing soon. Now, add to what's going on there with Hezbollah, another article here. Gantz set to leave government Saturday as ultimatum deadline approaches. He actually ended up leaving Sunday, yesterday, and this now provides or creates an issue for Netanyahu's government. Whereas his unity government, his emergency government that was formed after October 7th, it could be forced to go to elections, where then you have to, potentially compromise to get a majority and things of that nature. So that is something to watch. There is what's going to happen in Israel's political system, based off of now the government's beginning to dissolve a little bit with the exit of Gantz, who some say is a puppet of the Biden administration. He is definitely more left leaning and more sympathetic to the American interest of what they want to happen in Israel, which again is an immediate ceasefire, a two-state solution, so that it looks good on the presidential campaign for the Democrats. A couple more articles to look into. China is building a military to defeat the United States. Pete Hesgith wrote an article there that just shows another rumor of wars. You see a lot of stuff going on in the Pacific arena between Taiwan, China, the Philippines, Australia, Japan, even Korea. North Korea had just sent hundreds of trash balloons into South Korea just last week. A lot of stuff going on if you're paying attention right now. The world is definitely not at peace and at ease. It seems to be more of an intensification, which is expected when you look at the state of the world is going to be crying for a leader when the church is removed in the rapture. And so therefore you'll need the world to unfortunately progress down this path where they're going to need an answer man. Another article says the battleground is Palestine. Israel's war looms over European elections, just showing that in the elections going on, this Israel-Palestine issue is a center point. Another article, exodus of Russian ships from Black Sea's reserve base sparks rumors. There is a nuclear sub from Russia that has supposedly docked in Cuba. This hasn't happened since the Cuban Missile Crisis of the 60s. Again, wars and rumors of wars. This has got the U.S. on high alert. Having a Russian nuclear sub right off the coast, is not ideal. So that is something to keep an eye on here. Another article, concerns over Israel's future relationship with the U.S. It's no secret that the relationship between Israel and the United States is highly strained. Two completely different objectives going on here, as I've stated, with Israel needing to take care of their national security by taking care of these enemies. And the U.S. is really only concerned right now about our presidential election and what it looks like foreign policy wise. So it almost may say, or it almost seems to say, that we're willing to sell Israel for the sake of political expedience here right now. Another couple articles here, takeaways from the AP's report on sanctioned settlers in the West Bank. That was a report talking about how the U.S. has sanctioned some settlers for violence against Arabs. Another article, Netanyahu says war won't end unless Hamas is destroyed. Netanyahu has been very vigilant and adamant that we cannot just go into a ceasefire and allow Hamas to remain there. That would be the equivalent of the Allies stopping short of conquering Berlin and allowing the Nazi Party to remain in power in Germany and just say, well, enough is enough. Nobody would think that would be a smart idea, but that's the same thing that we are asking the Israelis to do with Hamas. Another article, continuing arms sales to Israel would be a moral crime, says a Labor donor. This is the Labor Party in Great Britain. You can see some cracks between Israel and Great Britain right now. specifically being the Labor Party vowing to make Palestinian statehood a key issue and one that they would support if they were elected. Let's look here. Ready to wage World War III, Kremlin warns West of fatal consequences after Ukraine strikes Russian soil with U.S. missiles. This is something that's kind of got missed a little bit with all the Israel talk, but supposedly, according to the article, we've allowed Ukraine to use our weapons to strike Russian soil. That can be taken as an attack from us. And so I actually just heard and read that the U.S. is now considered an enemy of Russia from Russia's one of their foreign ministers or spokespeople. So right now we're on the precipice of possibly being pulled into some type of a conflict in Europe with Russia based off of our loosely allowing Ukraine to use our own weapons to strike Russia rather than just being in self-defense. We're really playing with fire there. And then couple more. U.S. urges UN Security Council to support Gaza ceasefire plan. This is something I had mentioned at the beginning here that actually happened, and the UN Security Council approved it. So we're going to have to wait to see what's the outcome of that. And trying to see here if there is any other articles that we should go over quickly. I'll go over this last two here. Netanyahu under growing pressure to accept U.S. announced ceasefire plan. This is something that's been going on where our president announced a ceasefire plan that Israel had not agreed to, and now we are trying to force both parties to accept this. Again, there is a lot of pressure. And if you remember in previous updates, I've talked about that book, Eye to Eye, from Bill Koenig. Go check it out if you want to learn more. But as we put pressure on Israel to do things that hurt them, we will suffer here at home for it. And case in point is when we forced Israel to evacuate Gaza, and right after they did that, the United States was hit by the Category 4 storm, Hurricane Katrina, which was the worst national disaster we've ever had. And so this should make every American citizen nervous when we are putting so much extreme pressure on Israel to do things that are almost downright stupid for them in their policy. But the only thing we're looking at is a November election and wanting to maintain power. So something to keep an eye on there. And the last one, the U.S. warns Israel a limited war in Lebanon could push Iran to intervene. The last thing here to take understanding of is this increased talk, as I mentioned earlier, the Lebanon-Israel war. It's going to happen. The question is when and whether Israel will do a surprise attack or they will be surprise attacked and have to then retaliate. So that is our news wrap up for last week. Remember to keep a biblical worldview. That's why I do these. We view the world through the lens of Bible prophecy and through the scriptures. Being that we know that Israel is God's covenant people, He has a plan for national Israel. The church has not replaced them, and therefore we watch Israel, we pray for Israel, and that is the duty of every Bible-believing Christian. But until next time, God bless.